Okay, so in this video, we're going to continue on from the very last one, where at this stage we've got camera in our scene. It's making our menu like a little bit more interesting straight away because it's not in front of a boring backdrop. But now we want to look about how we can actually communicate between our UI widgets and those cameras. So bear in mind, this is just my method of doing it. There are probably about 10 different ways that you can do this in Unreal. I've just found that this way makes sense for me. By all means, you're welcome to experiment with different ways, but what I would say is when you're following tutorials online, try and make sure that you follow them very precisely. Make sure they're in the correct version of Unreal as well, because some of the nodes might have changed. Because it's very difficult for me and other members of staff to troubleshoot your issues when it's not following our tutorial. So we're going to jump straight back into Unreal here. So at the minute, we've got this one camera in place called camera one start, and that is being called on in our level blueprint straight away. So when event begin play, it's kind of telling us we want to set this as being the camera that we look through. So from here now, we kind of need to start getting some communication going between our level blueprint and our widgets. So there's loads of different ways you can do this. Some people use event dispatchers and stuff like that. What I find the handiest way for me to do it is I make a blueprint that just lives inside the level. It's like an empty blueprint, and it kind of does all the kind of heavy work for me. So I can communicate between all the widgets in that blueprint, and then that blueprint can communicate with the stuff that lives inside the level. So I promise it'll make more sense once I start doing it. So from here, I'm going to make a new blueprint class. Okay, so I'm just right clicking on a bit of empty space, going on blueprint class. It's going to be an actor. Now I've already made one in this project already. So called the camera controller. Okay, so this isn't going to have any visibility really in the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that in there. I'm not going to move it there. I'm going to move it back a little bit, and I'm going to double click on it now to start working on it. So just for our own kind of sanity, I'm going to add some text to this. I'm just going to add a text render, and I'm going to change this to be camera controller. So the reason I'm doing this is just so you guys can see it, so you can see that this actually exists inside the game. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to rotate that 90 degrees. So you can see now that's where that blueprint lives inside our level. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. Like later on, what I would normally do is I would make that component hidden in game, so we can still see it, but then when we hit play, it goes away. Okay, so our camera controller is just going to sit here, and we're going to send messages through it, and those messages then are going to communicate with stuff inside our level blueprint. So the first thing to do now is to get our widgets talking to this camera controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make inside our camera controller here, I'm going to go to the event graph. I'm going to get rid of these because I don't really need them. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make a custom event. And this custom event is just going to be called move camera. Okay, now it doesn't need anything at the minute because we're going to add a lot of scripting in here to make sure it works. But for now, I'm just going to drag off there. I'm going to do a quick print string, and I'm going to say move camera. Okay, so now we can compile that. So we need our widgets to talk to this. So the first thing that we need is second menu, because that's the one that's getting displayed on screen. So if I double click on second menu, UI underscore second menu, and I click on the graph editor, what we want to do now is we want to set this up that we can link this to that controller. So the way that we do this is we want to get a reference to that controller. Now this again is just a handy way that I found for doing stuff. So I'm going to go the event construct. I'm going to click and drag off that. So remember, this is a little bit different. These UI widgets don't have event begins plays. They've got event constructs instead. So I'm going to do this thing here called get all actors, or get actors of class. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to specify what I want it to get. So what I want it to get is camera. So it's the camera controller. Now what's going to happen here is this is going to spit me out a certain amount of these. So in this case, it should only give me one. So I should only have one of these. So what I can do is I can drag off there just to show you it happening again. If I drag off there and I say promote the variable, we can now call this, the camera controller. So what's going to happen is as soon as it starts, it's going to get the actor of the class. The other way of doing this is you can go get all actors of class. So just the difference of this is get all actors of class will return a array. So it'll look to see if there's more than one and then I'll store them in an array. But get actors of class for this case should work. So I'm going to hit compile. So if that happens, what I want to do is I want to run a slight delay on it of we'll say like 3 seconds. And then I want to call that custom event. And you can see there now that we've got access to move camera. So what this widget is doing is as soon as it gets made, it's going, I want to grab the camera controller actor if it's in the scene. I want to set that as being the camera controller as a variable so we can use this over and over again. I'm going to wait 3 seconds and then I'm going to run that little event called move camera. So if we were to hit play now, so you see now move camera is getting called. So what's happening now is we're able to communicate between this widget and the level blueprint essentially, or an actor that's in the level blueprint. So we can get rid of that, that's fine. So we know that this is working perfect. But what we want to do is add this to our other UI widgets as well. So it's a little bit of a quick copy and paste. So we go to the how to. I might have set this up already, so we're going to delete that. And I'm just going to paste the one that I had before. Okay, so I compile. So you see here there's an issue where we've not declared this, the camera controller. So what I'm going to do is going to get rid of that. So this is, you shouldn't have this, it should be left over. So I'm going to promote the variable. I'm going to call it the camera controller. And I'm going to hit compile. So that's just something I left over from before. So ignore that. So if we hit compile, it works fine now. So both these widgets can now communicate with that kind of container inside the level. So that's fine. So what we want to do now is we want to set up another camera in this level. So if I zoom out and I decide, you know what, we're going to, for this transition, we're going to put another camera in here. And we're going to move it, probably move it over. So this will kind of be like the how to play menu. So we're going to move this camera in the position where we want it. So maybe we'll kind of point it in at this doorway. So remember what we did before was we're just going to turn off this constraint aspect ratio. We don't want to have to worry about that. And now we're going to give this a name. So remember our first one's called camera 1. So we'll call this camera 2 underscore and we'll call it how to. So I'm just calling it how to because I know that that's the menu that's going to lead to it. So that's fine. So now what we need to do is we need to start getting some type of movement going between these two. So the best way for me to do this is to build it inside this custom event. So we know at the minute what we're going to end up using, and what we're going to end up using is this node here, but we want to be able to specify a specific camera that we're going to use. So we go to the camera controller. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a new variable and I'm going to call cameras. Now, when I come to the variable type here, I'm going to change this to be a camera actor, and it's going to be a reference. Now I'm going to hit compile. Now I don't need one camera, I need several cameras. So I'm going to store these as an array. So if you hover over here, you see the variable at the minute is a container. So we can make this, we can make this a container. So if we click, that's a single variable. The next one down is an array. So if I click on that and hit compile. So what we can do now is we can start adding in different cameras. We can start storing them. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to make this a public variable, which means that we can access it in the editor. And we're going to add 2 elements to it. Okay. So if we hit compile now and we pop back into our level editor, if we click on here, you can see now we've got cameras here that we can specify. So I want camera 1 to be camera 1 start. 0 is the bottom array of your elements. So that's the first one. And then the second one, I want it to be how to. So what we can do now when we pop back in here is, rather than us just doing what we did here, we got one camera and we said set view target with blend. What we can do now is inside the camera controller, we can grab this. And remember, this is an array. So we can say, we want you to get a copy. And this is asking us which one do you want. So 0 will be the first thing in the array because array start at 0. So we look on here. That's camera start. 1 would be camera 2. So from there, we can then call on. So we know that we need our get player controller. So we need to set view target with blend. And this time now, we want to plug that into our new target. Okay, so at the minute, there's no blend time set for these. So it'll just automatically do it. But we want to just make sure that it's working first to begin with. So if we hit play, everything kind of looks like normal. It's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to change this to array element 1. So that's going to grab the second kind of camera, which we know we've set up in the editor. And the second camera is camera 2, how to. So now what we want to do is we want to go into our UI here, and where we've already got a little bit of scripting in place where we're saying on clicked, remove this from the parent, add the new widget, add the viewport. What we want to do now is grab the camera controller and we want to call on move camera. So that means whenever we click this button, it's going to run through our events as it always was, but now it's going to move the camera, and we've already set this function up, or this custom event up, that it's going to move it to that next camera. Okay, but now you notice if we hit back, nothing changes. So we need to get it set that we can kind of specify which camera do we actually want this to move to. And there's a really easy way of doing that. So anytime you make a custom event in Unreal, or functions, you can call an input at the same time. So what we're doing here is we're going to say, right, whenever we call this, we want to feed it an input, and we're going to say it's going to be the camera number, and we want to make this an integer, and we're going to plug this integer into here. Now we might run into some issues because now it's asking us which camera do we want to use for this click. So remember, this is the how-to one, so that's element 1. But now we can add this script to our next one, which is the how-to menu. So the how-to menu, we click on the button, we remove it from the parent, and we make that original menu again. So we can drag this in. And we're going to call that custom event again, called move camera. And we're going to leave that at 0. So basically means now, whenever you click the back button on the how-to menu, this one here, it's going to do all the same things it did in the last video, where it's going to remove this from the parent, it's going to make the main menu again, add the viewport, but now it's going to send a message to move to the camera controller and say move it back to the first camera. So we hit play, how-to, back to our main menu, how-to, back to our main menu. And because we've stored those cameras in an array, we can just keep adding things to it. So we can add extra cameras. But you'll notice it's just snapping and it's a little bit boring. So we come into camera controller, we can change our blend time, so we can specify how long we want it to be. So now, so I've set this to be 2 seconds. So now if I hit play, you notice the camera is switching between the two, and now it's switching back. So we might want to add a delay in there where we don't want to delay, we don't want to show this next menu until it already arrives at its destination. So that's something that we could modify as well. So if we know that's 2 seconds, then I'm in the how-to menu here. So all I can do is I can shift this earlier in my script. And we're going to put a little delay in there. Okay, so now we hit compile. Let's have a look at it in action. So, and then it appears just as we arrive. So on the surface, it seems very, very complicated, but all we've really done is we've made a blueprint actor here called the camera controller. The camera controller stores all our cameras for us. So we make that a public variable so we can set these inside the editor. Make a custom event here. The custom event feeds in a number into that array. So it basically tells it which camera we want it to use. And then it sets it as being the new camera. And then all we need to do is make sure that whenever we construct these widgets, we're getting a reference to the camera controller and we're storing it as a variable. The reason we're storing it as a variable is we can just easily call it again later. You could actually just wire this down here. And then all you need to do then is add it on to the end of your buttons. So obviously this could then be like layered up a little bit more detailed, where you could have like some audio effects. We could have animations as well. So part of this could be whenever I had how to play, maybe that fades out, then it transitions over, then it fades in. Maybe when I fade back, we do the same thing. So you can do a lot more stuff. You can have bits of the scene interact as well, because we've got that camera controller in there now. We can access everything in our level blueprint. We just need to reference it inside the camera controller. So try and give it a try this week. See how you get on with it. And if there are any major issues, you can send me a message on Teams. You can put it in an email. You can zip up your entire project. Send me a link to it if you're having any major issues. And I will hopefully catch up with you guys next week.